Everyone, ex-wall killed Bethelite here. Just getting a few things in order for our discussion here today. Getting a few things set up, but what we want to try to do is be interactive. So I'm going to try to get it set up so that I can respond to comments. But I don't want to hear feedback. So that's the technical stuff I'm working on right now. Let's see. Whoops. Yeah, there'll be a little bit of a delay, but trying to get the chat set up here. Says it's connected. I've done it before. Now I'm trying to figure out how to do it again. But let's get started. You'll see Bernie here, knocked out sleep. He is knocked out there on the couch. I was here, and then I got up to go and get some things ready for the live, and then he took my place. So as soon as I came back, he was exactly where I was, laying up against the pillow, exactly how I was, stretched out just how I was stretched out. So Bernie was like, yeah, that looked comfortable. And he wanted to give it a try here. So Bernie's going to be joining us. But we're going to talk about the goings-ons with the governing body and the broadcast, and we're going to talk about how historic it is, what they've done. Let me check here if I can access the chat. I don't know. Oh, here it is. I may have done something to it. Let's see. All right. This should set it up to where chat function is available. There we go. Now it's working. So basically, I had it set up so where the chat wasn't even an option before. So now it's an option. Serenity just tested it out for us. But let's get into our discussion. I want to sit back without sitting on Bernie's legs here. Squeeze over, Bernie. And yeah, it's historic because for the longest time we've been saying that Jehovah's Witnesses are extremists, and believe it or not, there was actually a debate even amongst former members of the Jehovah's Witness cult as to whether or not we can label it extremist. Now, Russia labeled Jehovah's Witnesses extremists, and I think that's what got the whole conversation started about, yes, we know it's a cult. It's a group of people that all follow the governing body or group of men as if those men where God and what those men say supersede the Bible, that's pretty much a cult. Whenever you get people who are essentially worshiping the leadership, you pretty much have a cult, and those things can get out of control and get out of control real quick because you're dealing with masses of people who are willing to do anything for this cult, especially with Jehovah's Witnesses. They're willing to uh, shun their family members. So Russia uh, banned Jehovah's Witnesses. I always agreed with the ban. And is everybody able to post in the chat? Is the chat an option now? It should actually be an option. Let me see. Oh, yeah, you can chat. All right, let me go back to it. Okay. It wasn't before. Now it is. So that's the reason why they're changing all the rules, because they're starting to get fallback from all these all these governments and government officials who are saying, hey, you guys are a little bit way too extreme, and we're not going to give you guys funding, or we're not going to give you guys legal status. So what do Jehovah's Witnesses do? Well, they complain and whine and write letters and what have you. And everybody was saying, oh, they're not extreme. The only way a person can be extreme is if they go into a crowd and shoot up the crowd, or if they go into a crowd and strap a bomb on their backs and then blows up people or a crowd, and that makes them extreme. Most of us with common sense know that being extreme is not limited to somebody shooting guns or blowing up things with bombs. That is not the only criteria for being extreme. We just look up the word extreme in the dictionary. So we always knew that the defense that probably came from a bunch of Jehovah's Witnesses that, hey, yeah, we treat our families horribly. We refuse to speak to our own direct sons and daughters and what have you for decades upon decades. Like, we'll literally die and not speak to them again. But we don't think that's extreme, not even in the smallest bit. Well, the governing body has essentially folded. They agree that they're extreme. Otherwise, they wouldn't have changed all these rules, and every single change follows the same pattern. The change is to kind of soften up a little bit. So the fact of the matter is, Jehovah's Witnesses are extremists. The governing bodies agree that they're extremists. And what do you guys think in the chat about that? Let's see if we can get some interaction from the chat about the governing body coming forward and pretty much agreeing that they were extreme. Those rules were extreme. They're starting to change not just some of the rules, but a ton of them. In other words, a lot of them were extreme. Donna W. says, God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. But the governing body cannot make up their mind. That's a powerful point. And that's a powerful point because God doesn't have to flip-flop on doctrines. God doesn't have to get told by the government that they're extreme and then turn around and have to change a bunch of things. So the governing body was never being guided by God. Give me one moment, I'll be right back. Bernie will take over for you right here. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back here. Somebody said hello to Bernie. So let's get back to that point that we were covering. And that was Donna's point that God is the same yesterday. So here's the thing with Christian belief, God is all knowing. There isn't anything that he doesn't know. So there isn't anything that he can be wrong about. If a person is flat out wrong and they say that their ideas or ideology originally came from Jehovah, well, they're flat out lying, because God cannot be wrong. If you can see everything in the past, everything in the present, and everything in the future all at the same time, it's impossible. You can't be wrong. There can't be something that you don't know. So the only thing is, and this is what Jehovah's Witnesses like to use as their favorite deflection. This is their favorite deflection, because Jehovah's Witnesses have been wrong, and they have been wrong to such a degree. Like, when they shoot the basketball, they ain't hitting the rim, they ain't hitting the backboard. That ball's going all the way out into the bleachers, and it was such a bad shot that they need an excuse now. Well, the thing about that is Jehovah's Witnesses like to use the concept that, well, God can change his mind. Well, God can originate a rule or a concept and change it. For example, they like to use circumcision, where God flat out told Abraham, this is what we're going to do. We're going to get people circumcised. We're going to do this, that, and the third. He flat out told Abraham, we're going to get these people circumcised. Well, Jehovah's Witnesses compare teaching something that was false, something God never said in the Bible, such as men aren't supposed to have beards, or Jesus is Michael. Like, literally, they're the same person. The person that came to earth was Michael, the archangel. He just changed his name to Jesus for some reason. These types of teachings never came from God in the beginning. It was never spelled out in the Bible. It's their interpretation of what they thought the scripture meant. They were flat out wrong. They have been wrong about 607 BCE. They've been wrong about the end of the world predictions. This is in an entirely different ballpark from God saying, I want everybody circumcised, and then changing to, well, it's not necessary for everybody to be circumcised, or whatever the excuse Jehovah's Witnesses use. So it's a huge difference between shooting the ball, missing the rim, the backboard. The ball's all the way across the street. Like, that is flat out wrong, from a person getting ready to shoot the basketball and deciding, no, I'm going to pass the ball instead. Like, that's because somebody's closer to the rim. That's totally different from a complete and total fabrication that came up to be false. So Jehovah's Witnesses can't use an example of God changing his mind, for example, saying that he's going to destroy a group of people, and I think it was with Jonah, then deciding, nah, I'm not going to destroy him. It's a huge difference between God making a decision and a group of men telling you that they speak for God, and then everything that they're saying was flat out false. Flat out false. That means that they didn't speak for God. So they're not the same thing. Jehovah's Witnesses like to try to use things to try to confuse people. Somebody said that they heard rumors that they will allow birthday parties. Now, I don't think that the changes are over by any stretch of the imagination, because Jehovah's Witnesses are so extreme. It's like a tiger trying to change its stripes or whatever. Like it's uh, an old dog trying to learn new tricks. Everything about them is extreme. Like you think about the Nazi Party back in old Germany. If you take a group that's extreme, you're not going to be able to just change a couple rules, like their attire. With Jehovah's Witnesses, well, you don't have to wear a tie now. You don't have to wear a jacket. Women can wear pants. Imagine the Nazi Party in Germany changing their dress code and then saying, well, now we're not extreme anymore. You can now say hello to someone on the way to the concentration camp. Now we're not extreme anymore. This is exactly what Jehovah's Witnesses are doing. They're changing a few things here and there, changing a little bit about their attire, what they wear, and they're still persecuting people. They're still putting grown adults in time out for untold amounts of time, calling it disfellowshipping, where no one's allowed to, everybody treats them like they got leprosy. But saying, okay, well, we're not extreme now because you can talk to them for a little bit. That's not going to work. That's not going to fly. The comments pop up and then they disappear on me. It says, God does evolve, but never, this is Serenity's comment. God does evolve, but never strays from the original law of love. To never change based on experience would be detrimental to all creation. So, of course, Serenity could expound on that better than I could, but that's Serenity's comment on the discussion here. So, I think that is historic. I don't think governing body have ever come forward with a broadcast and pretty much agreed with the government. Granted, the changes aren't enough. They haven't changed enough. Changing a couple of things with the dress code, changing something where, okay, well, now people can decide that they're going to join our cult at the last minute now. That's not enough when you're talking about a group that is as extreme as Jehovah's Witnesses are. Anybody want to touch on anything else before we talk about something different? Last chance to post a comment on that. But Donna's comment was great about God is supposed to be a solid foundation, not somebody that don't know what the heck they're doing, not the author of confusion where he don't know what the heck going on and he don't know from one year to the next year what his own teachings are or anything to that effect. That's what's going on with Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is this debate that was also going on, that the governing body believed in the religion, or that the governing body really did believe that what they were teaching was true. Now, I never thought that, because I don't think, from the point of Charles Taze Russell, from Charles Taze Russell, I don't think from that point on, governing body members or presidents and people of that sort believed what they were feeding the masses. Somebody says, Ellie Sambrook, I may have pronounced it wrong, says, God, according to them, lives in the dark, letting bits of light in at the time. That's a real good way of putting the whole, well, the light gets brighter. They say that every time they get something wrong and then they got to change it. Well, it was dark before and now all of a sudden the light is bright. Well, how come they're still changing things if the light got brighter? Apparently, it's not a matter of the light bulbs. It's a matter of they're wrong a lot. But Sixes says, I've never thought that either. No, I don't think. So sometimes what happens is a person can be somewhat mentally out there or somewhat imaginative to the point where if you see somebody and they're explaining something, now this thing didn't happen, but in their mind they think it happened, oh, they can be convincing. Somebody said it's never spiritual light. Sixes says it's never spiritual light. It is, wait a minute, it's never spiritual light. Is it just new light? Yeah, it's just constantly new, changing. But if a person really believes in their mind that something happened, whether it be, let's say somebody was in a coma and they wake up thinking that, whether they did or not, but they wake up thinking that they went to heaven and spoke to God, or they went to hell and spoke to the devil, or whatever the case may be. Well, they come back when they wake up telling everybody about what they thought, whether it had been real or a dream, or how your body responds when it's in that state. They sound convincing because they believe it themselves. I think that's one of the reasons why Charles Taze Russell was so successful in getting certain concepts started, because he probably really did believe, because I think he really was interested in Christianity, but pushing the envelope to the point where you're getting into the occult. You're getting into Masonic beliefs. You're getting into ancient pyramids and how he thinks ancient pyramids, and he kind of thinks everything is okay with God to dabble in, right? You're dealing with a person like that who gets a following because he sounds convincing because he believes it. Well, once he got everything started, it's not that hard for a person to then take over and then just go through the motions. Everything's already started, right? The religion is already started by Charles Taze Russell. It's almost like Ellen G. White, the, I guess, original leader of the Seventh-day Adventists. She probably really did believe. She was seeing visions and she's telling people about what she thinks he saw or saw. Same with Joseph Smith, although I don't think Joseph Smith I don't think Joseph Smith really believed it, because Joseph Smith was sleeping with everybody's wife. But Joseph Smith went into the forest, came back out saying he saw God and Jesus and what have you. And if he did think that he saw that, he could be pretty convincing. Well, with the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses, I've never thought that they believed their own teaching. For one, all you have to do is watch the broadcast. Watch how they speak. Watch how fake they are. They're not speaking as if they're a group of people who are literally getting information sent to them by God, or they're not speaking as if they're a group of people who literally think God gives them some kind of special power to that when they open the Bible, they're able to find things no one else can. Because if they did, they would sound a whole lot more convincing and a whole lot less like they're just reading something off of a, what do you call those things where a person who's on a news broadcast, a teleprompter or something like that, where they're just reading something and going through the motions. You know the governing body does not believe their own BS, essentially. And an example of that is somebody said Malcolm X. An example of that is France, Ray France. You would have plenty of people, right? You're not going to have a group of people that just all agree on everything. That would be rare, right? So when you think about the Mormons have one specific leader. Everybody else is kind of under that person, right? Everybody may not agree with it, but they may not have the authority to argue back and forth. Well, if you have a setup like the Jehovah's Witnesses have, where you've got a quote unquote governing body and all of them, I guess, are supposedly got the same title, well, technically, you would think you would have a lot of back and forth and a lot of different ideas and different concepts because you got like 8 different people. There's no way they all just think alike on everything. So what's the governing body member's name that looks like he's inbred? Splain. When Splain was going around talking about overlapping generations, it's like they just made it up because they know it's BS. It's not that these people really are passionate about the religion and really truly believe it. Because how in the heck do you get 8 people in a room and somebody comes up with some overlapping generations teaching that don't even make sense and they all agree, all 8 of them just agree? No, they probably just assigned it to them. Like, hey, you come up with something. We got to bring something out because we're just wrong a lot. So we got to get something together to make it. Somebody says God is love. God is not the author of confusion. That's in the Bible, I believe, that God's not the author of confusion. So the whole concept of that is in the Bible. Christopher Estrada says they are Illuminati. Then Christopher Estrada says, just kidding. Well, you believe that they are or aren't. Somebody now is saying that they're Freemasons. It's popping up here, but not there. So I don't think that the governing body believe in their own garbage. For one, you would have a whole lot more Ray Francis, number one. Number two, these types of things would happen a lot where you would have people that didn't agree. So they would have a method of dealing with the Ray Francis. The Ray Francis may have never left because they would have had a way to all come together and study and research and pray and figure it out, right? I think they just toe the line, right? They just keep the thing going. There was a time where you just put it all together, take all the pieces and put it together. You had a governing body member that was brought before a court at the Royal Commission into Child Abuse. Fina asked a good question. I'm going to get to that. And when they were asking who came up with this watchtower or who came up with this and that, he had no idea. He didn't know who wrote this or who wrote that. The governing body member that was saying, well, it'd be presumptuous for us to say that we were the only ones that have the truth. When he was saying all that, it's like they're just going with the flow. They're going with whatever seems like the best route to take at the time. They don't really believe it. If he truly believed that they were the one and only true religion selected by God, he'd have told them in front of everybody. Because it had been his conviction, his faith. It had been in his heart. He would have told them in front of everybody. No, they changed it right there in the at the court. So no, there's no way that all these 8 men are truly convinced that these teachings are a part of their heart, a part of who they are, a part of what they truly believe, because they change it so easily and so fast every time. They're constantly changing this stuff. Somebody asked, Marcus, how long have you been outside of the JW church? That's a good question. I went to Bethel in early 2000. I think I got back from when they were laying everybody off, just sending everybody wherever they were sending them, essentially telling a bunch of people who had completely relied upon Watchtower for shelter and food and everything else that they just had to go. Watchtower didn't know where they had to go, if they had a place or anything. They just, you got to go. And they took my stuff, put it in boxes, put it in my car, asked me where my car was parked. I told them, of course, back then I believed it, so I'm telling the truth. If it were now, I wouldn't have told them where my car was. You know what I mean? They'd have had to, I don't know what they'd have done. I wouldn't have never even opened the door when the overseer came. They'd have had to break their own door down to get me out of there. But no, I told them the truth. Then they packed all my stuff in boxes in the car, piled it all up. They didn't care at all. Imagine somebody piling up boxes of your stuff in your car to the point where you can't see. You can't turn around and back up your car because they got it packed to the ceiling. You can't see, and they don't care. That was eye-opening. And guess what? I had to drive. My father lived in New Jersey. So that was a good 3-4 hours or something to that effect. I don't remember exactly. That was a good little while that I had to think. I had time to sit and think about this organization full of people that's supposed to be a family. You heard the phrase Bethel family. And they don't care if you ate. They don't care if you have food. They don't care where you're even going. But they pack your stuff in your car. This is how they treat me. So I'm guessing this is how they treat everybody. They pack your crap in your car and tell you to get lost. I went and got some juice and some fruit. Fortunately, that way I had something to where I could at least think straight while I'm driving. But they could care less. So from that point, that started the waking up process, right? It took me a while. I didn't just wake up in one day. It took me a while. So from 2006 is what started the waking up process. And I don't have an exact date. It was a journey, let's say. Let me see. Let me get caught up on some of the comments. Tammy G. But Fina, that was a good question. Tammy G says, I believe that they are atheists. No disrespect to atheists. The GB are all con men using the Bible for profit. I think so also. I don't think it's possible for you to believe in God and use the Bible to mislead and misguide people for profit. There's just no way. So the governing body are charlatans that there's no way they believe their teachings, otherwise they couldn't change it like that. There's no way that I truly believe in a doctrine, but then I can just change it the next day and just like it was nothing. Talk about all the light got brighter. They know the light didn't get brighter. They know that they taught it at one point and they had nothing to do with no light, and then they just changed it at another point. So I agree. I think the governing body they do not believe what they're teaching. Just watch the broadcast and watch how fake they are. Somebody says, Kevin Glasgow, do you believe at some point the JW religion will just end soon? Well, here's the thing with that. With most religions, they die off slowly. Literally, you got a large group of people who are virtually mentally insane. Are they just all going to become sane all at once? Typically, this is not what happens. Typically, they die off. They die off, but their religion is so ridiculous that they can't convince enough people to join to replace all the people that are dying off. Now, I say that that's typically what happens. But with Jehovah's Witnesses, this cult is run so poorly. This is one of the worst run cults in the world. The cult can't even get its own false teachings, what the heck it wants to teach people, right? Or get it to where they ain't got to change it all the time. They are very capable of waking people up all on their own because it's so ridiculous. Everything they do is bad, from the people that they pick to be governing body members, how fake and how odd and just how horrible they all are at public speaking, and that's pretty much to a certain extent their job, to the teachings, how bad they are with the teachings. So I think normally a religion dies off slowly. They can't bring in enough people. They can't compete with other churches and religions, and people are dying off and, leaving of their own will. But I think Jehovah's Witnesses will die off and the religion will die off faster because it's so poorly run. Either that'll happen or it just will cease to exist in the form that we've known it to exist. They are already in the process of changing every rule they have ever had. So for the person who asked that question, which that was a good question, Kevin Glasgow, if the Jehovah's Witnesses change everything that made them who they were, they change every rule, are they still the same group? Have they been wiped off the face of the earth, so to speak, in the sense that the group as it existed no longer exists anymore? So one way or the other, I think the answer to your question is yes. Either they're going to die off, they can't bring in enough people to cover the people that are leaving and dying off, or they'll just change the whole freaking thing. There'll be so many changes to the point where they got the same name, but it ain't the same cult. Either way, that's what's going to happen. Now, let's see. Tammy G says, Kevin, Watchtower's Inn is definitely near. I personally don't see them around in less than 10 years. Shoot, the way that they are changing stuff, they may not be around in the form we know them in less than 10 years. The way that they're changing and the fact that they need to change all this stuff to where they can get funding from governments and things of that sort, I would cut the 10 years in half and they may not be around the way we know them anymore at all. Let's see. Fina says, what's with all these crazy new developments in the JW? Are the leadership in some kind of panic mode due to losing members? I think it's losing members and losing funding, where their money comes from, because come on now, at the end of the day, follow the money. So they're losing money, tons of it. I don't think that they really understood when a country the size of Russia says, you guys aren't legal anymore, and they start shutting down halls, how much money they lost from that. Coupled with it, the most latest developments from the government officials removing funding from, they're losing money like you wouldn't believe. So, all them little huts that they're setting up in Africa is not covering the amount of money that they've been losing in these well-developed countries. So you better believe they're in panic mode trying to figure this out, because if too many countries all start saying, hey, you guys are just too out there, we're not giving you money, well, that's the whole reason why the governing body are out lying to people, telling them they're getting stuff from God is to make money and to grow their power. The congregations enable a tax-free real estate. You got that exactly right. Jehovah's Witnesses are darn near not even a religion. It is a tax-free real estate company where they are essentially flipping properties and selling them to other people. Somebody says it's just going to become an online evangelical channel. Well, I tell you what, I think that the Jehovah's Witnesses, if the governing body, let's put it like this. Like I said before, the governing body are really bad at everything that they do. Every decision they make is horrible. They should have went online. They should have. They didn't, but they should have. I think there's going to be a time that's going to come where they ain't even going to be able to go online. Not in the sense that they're not capable of going online, but it's not going to work. They're going to ruin what's left of the religion to the point where if they try to go online, they still not going to have as many members. That's not going to grow their membership. Essentially, they done ruined the religion to the point where that's not even going to help. They won't stop protecting pedophiles and shunning people who want to leave. And that's some of the things that we're touching on. And that is that Jehovah's Witnesses are extremists. They have been extremists. And the governing body is essentially coming out and admitting it. And they coming out and admitting it by agreeing to change tons and tons of rules. But the whole religion was an extremist group, so they wanted to change everything. Do you believe in God? We're going to get to that. Eduardo, we're going to get to that. Kurt says, do you eat pork fish? I eat fish. I never heard of pork fish. I heard of pork rinds. Kevin Micken says, I can't pick a religion. I feel like God doesn't hear me. We're going to get to that, Kevin. Those are good points. We're going to touch on that. Cyber Loki says, brother, the way the world is going and how you're talking, I'm assuming you are deep into the vaccination subscription model. I don't know what that means. The vaccination subscription model. This is something I've never heard of. But you're into your thing, you know what I mean? Research your thing, whatever that is. What you want to do is get into your research and dig into your research and use your mind I'm not going to say that that sounds out there or nothing like that, because you don't need other people to agree with you all the time to get into what you get into. Man wrote God. I guess that's the question of what was first, the egg or the chicken, or what was first? Who came up with the idea? Did God come up with the idea of man, or did man come up with the idea of God? Somebody says, Jesus loves you. Thank you, Tia. Kevin Micken says, so God's not real. Why did man write God? Kevin, you don't want to just go with whatever people tell you. This is what we're going to touch on a little bit later. Trouble in Paradise says God is man-made. This is interesting. All right, so let me scroll up. I think I have touched on quite a few of the comments. Fina says it's quite ironic that they're changing in order to continue receiving money from the government while most of their film materials are persecution porn like by the government. Yeah. But see, that's the thing. This is my view on Splain throwing a hissy fit on a broadcast, talking about almost like he's threatening the government, talking about God's going to get the government because the government won't give him money. You know how dumb that sounds? The government won't give us. He talks in a weird. He's got a weird voice. Like I said, like he's inbred or something, and he talks real slow, like it's difficult for him to concentrate or whatever. Brothers, the God is not going to put up with the governments not giving us money. The governments need to pad our pockets because some of us who are inbred, we need that money for scientific research into fixing inbred people. So yeah, Splain is really upset about the government not giving them money. Could you imagine if they truly believed that they were the one true religion? Splain wouldn't be worried about the governments giving them money because he would truly believe in his heart that God or that Jehovah is going to carry them through anything that comes before them, that they didn't need the government's money. But Splain knows full well that God is not helping Watchtower, and yes, they need the funding from the government in order to pad those pockets. All right, okay, I think I finally got caught up. Yeah, I finally got caught up. Trouble in Paradise says God needs money from Satan's government. Well, there you go. It doesn't make any sense. The teachings don't make any sense. Teachings for the longest time have been that the devil is essentially running the government. So why would Jehovah's Witnesses be throwing a hissy fit that the government isn't being nice to them? Wouldn't they expect that? James says, concerning the organization's position on the topic of gambling, they never mention the fact that Samson, Jehovah's approved servant, set up a wager in Judges chapter 14, 12, and 13. Be careful, James. You're going to make them change something again. They're wrong about a lot of stuff. Yeah, they were wrong about a lot of stuff. Now, here's another thing about the broadcast. Another point I wanted to touch on, and that is, in order to publicly change rules, like get on a broadcast and change all these rules, you must also publicly admit to those rules. So they admit that beards were a thing, where Jehovah's Witnesses like to get on these chats and they like to go on people's videos on YouTube and get in the comment section. They always lie. They always lie and say there was never a rule on beards, or they'll say, well, beards is not a big deal. There's countries where there's somewhere on the planet where people are allowed to have beards. Or you can't go and lie when your leadership has gotten on a broadcast and changed the beard rule, meaning it was a rule. You had grown freaking men who wanted to grow beards but couldn't because the governing body told them they weren't allowed to, right? If you had a bunch of people that didn't want beards to begin with, they wouldn't be growing them right now. So field service was changed along with the beard rule. The whole you can join last minute thing changed. Wearing ties, you don't have to wear ties anymore, all that stuff. Pants, women can wear pants. We know the cart thing was a change a while back, being able to stand next to carts. And some of these Jehovah's Witnesses set their cart up in places where they're darn near not visible, right? It's the polar complete opposite of having to actually go up to somebody's door and knock on it and face a person. When you are able to set up a cart off in some park somewhere off to the side where ain't nobody even over there, right? And you get your time in not even having to talk to nobody anymore. Like, that was a change. And you got to understand that all these things that they change, one of the biggest issues is these are things that people would essentially have been persecuted for. People would have been called worldly for. This is now the norm. Jehovah's Witnesses are normalizing what they would have said back in a few years back are worldly, wearing beards. If I just came to the Kingdom Hall with a beard, I would have been judged as being rebellious or worldly, or Jehovah is not approved of this guy because he's got facial hair. This is how Jehovah's Witnesses think. That's why these are major changes. The field service time. You used to have to get 90 freaking hours to be called a pioneer. Who knows? Before then, it could have been more. But you had to get 90 hours. So if 90 hours was set for the pioneers, and for auxiliary, it was probably like 50 or something like that. I can't remember what that even was. But I think it was like 50 or something. Well, what they expected everybody to get was up there. You had to get at least 10 hours or you in trouble. Like, you're about to get persecuted. Like, you are literally about to lose your family because these elders at the end of the month are checking everybody's time and asking for everybody's time. And you ain't got but 10 hours. Who cares what your work schedule was or anything of that sort? You in trouble. You in trouble. So for them to go from that to the far extreme to you ain't even got to report no specific time. What about all those people that at the end of the month was stressed out, almost like having to pay bills at the end of the month? You got to come up with X amount of hours. Like, if you had, I think it was more like you needed like 15 or some odd hours. Otherwise, you darn near worldly to Jehovah's Witnesses. You darn near ready to get cast out. Right? These were extreme rules. And these are why I think they had to change them. They had to change them because they're an extremist group, and every rule they had was to the extreme. Beards you'd have been pointed at as worldly. Your field service time could have cause you to be ostracized or pointed out as worldly. And what we mean by worldly is God don't approve of you and God's going to kill you and destroy you. At Armageddon was their teaching. Joining last minute. Oh, come on now. There's so many people that if they didn't immediately say that they had faith in everything the governing body said, somebody says Rutherford was a Freemason and a drunk. That is hilarious. If you didn't believe right when they told you, oh, you're either disfellowshipped or you're branded as somebody that they don't want to be around, and that's including your family. Essentially, they would start the religious torture. They would torture a person for what they're allowing people to do now. And this is such an extreme change. People are able to join last minute now. They're able to wait way into the Great Tribulation and then join the religion. No, back in the day of the Great Tribulation happened and you wasn't in, you're dead meat, according to what they're telling everybody. So this is freaking huge. And I don't even think Jehovah's Witnesses know how to respond to this, because they're like, aren't we supposed to shun everybody that don't believe everything that they're told without being able to see the evidence? Well, they changed all that. Wearing ties. I mean, come on now. You go to the meeting. You can take off your jacket and put it on the chair, and it's not a big deal. But you go to the meeting, you ain't got no tie. You ain't got no tie. You about to get branded as worldly. I'm telling you, people will literally have to sit at the Kingdom Hall and decide whether or not they're going to speak to you or not if you did not have a tie. You can't go to the hall and not have a tie. These people were extreme. And that's why why else would they change something that seems so freaking stupid? You ain't got to wear ties now. Because there were people who probably didn't want to wear ties for various reasons. Maybe they had fat necks and couldn't find ties that fit. And they weren't comfortable with ties, but if they didn't wear one, the cult would immediately persecute them and try to isolate them and treat them as if God's going to kill them because they don't wear a tie. I kid you not. This is how Jehovah's Witnesses have been for so many years. And that's why I think they had to change it. Women can wear pants. We all know that as a woman, if you'd have came into the hall with some pants, they'd have thought you were a harlot. They'd have thought that you were a harlot. I kid you not. There were people that came to visit my hall back in Central, and they were wearing regular clothes. The women didn't have any dresses on, and all the guys were looking like they were afraid to go up and say hello. They weren't even members, but they were afraid to say hello to these women in front of everybody because it would be to them the same as, walking up to a prostitute. If a person wants to talk to a prostitute, they typically wouldn't do it in front of all their peers. Like they're going to want to look around, make sure ain't nobody. This is how extreme they were. If these women were wearing pants and they're at the hall, all these guys are like, what the heck? I can't go up and say hello because it's like walking right up to a harlot and saying hello in front of everybody. And that's how extreme that was. So that's the extreme changes that had to be made. Same thing with carts. You had to do door to door. All the things that they changed that seem minor and stupid, these are things that people would have got persecuted for. Somebody says, Fina says, at this rate, it's possible that they'll eventually change their whole anti-blood transfusion policy too. But you got to understand, they hadn't already been changing that. started off as you can't take no blood, and then it started into, well, you could take blood particles, and they ain't been able to make up their mind on that either. So that's already been changing. You think about it, freaking everything has been changed or has been changed around before. Donna's laughing about the fat necks. There are people with fat necks. That a regular tie would fit on them like a bow tie. Where a bow tie, when you put it on, you don't have much fabric at the end. It's the same with a regular tie that's supposed to go all the way down here. The people with the fat necks, all that neck fat would take up to where you would just have your tie would stop like right here. Wouldn't that be embarrassing? You're walking around, people with fat necks, a lot of times their shoulders are up here. You're walking around like this, and your neck's fat, and your tie only comes to here. Looks like a little baby bib you got on. People probably thought it was embarrassing, didn't want to wear the tie because they didn't have no ties long enough to go around their fat neck and hang down as low as ties are supposed to. So yeah, people probably didn't want to wear ties because of that, but Jehovah's Witnesses are such extremists. All they know is follow every rule the governing body sets, or we're treating you like an outcast. You're going to die at the Battle of Armageddon that we teach is going to come, and we got to make sure we don't speak to you. Your family can't speak to you over dumb stuff. That's why I think they're changing a lot of this stuff. Let me see. Somebody says they can't, too much blood on their hands for that. Trouble in Paradise, that's a good point, but they did change it. They changed it to now you can take blood fractions, and they done changed so much crap with that. I can't remember if they made it a conscious matter yet. I can't remember. Somebody can let me know if the blood policy, if it's yet a conscious matter, because they didn't change it so many things. Somebody says changing the blood policy would cause a revolution from all the survivors of the no blood policy. It would definitely wake them up, because I know people personally who needed a blood transfusion, almost died, did not take the blood transfusion, risked their life, but then woke up later. So yeah, if they changed that, all the people that darn near died and had to suffer from not taking the blood that would have helped in their surgery, I think they would wake up. I think a lot of them would wake up like, wait a minute, you done made me go through all that suffering, darn near died, and it wasn't even necessary. Trouble in Paradise, they allow blood fractions but no white blood cells. Too bad that white blood cells are passed through mother's milk during breastfeeding. It's totally natural. Yeah, I think that's been one of those things that people debate also, that's dumb too. Because there's some people believe that the mother, even when the baby's inside her, that her blood and the baby's blood are separate. And I started to do research on that because I'm thinking, how is that possible when the entire freaking child is conceived inside the mom? The freaking child has got a tube attached to him, and then the other side of the tube is in the mom, right? So all the nutrients, if the mom drinks alcohol, if the mom's on crack, the baby's a crack baby, which I think is part of the problem with the governing body. But if the mom is on crack, the baby's a crack baby, because whatever goes in the mom goes into the child. So it's hard to believe. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's hard to believe a child can be in somebody's body and not make contact with that person's blood. I mean, is that even possible? That you can be conceived inside somebody's body, but their blood, where the heck does the kid's blood come from? Like, you know what I mean? It had to come from some sort of material that was in the woman's body to begin with. So, yeah, the concept that other people in their blood is so freaking holy that the person has got to die because the body fluid is more important than the freaking human life is unreal. It's ridiculous. Because otherwise, you'd have a whole bunch of Jehovah's Witnesses aborting babies because they're worried that that baby might make contact with some body fluid inside them. And that body fluid is more important than the baby's life, which we already know that that's true with Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't know how many babies probably died because they wouldn't take blood and the child needed it. And yeah, that's true. People martyred their kids. Empress 88 says, my son needed blood when he was born. They took some of mine, which makes sense. Logically, it makes sense. Child came from you, so they should be able to use some of your blood into the child and it wouldn't hurt anything. Serenity says she doesn't have the same blood type as her mother. This is what I'm saying about I haven't researched it. So the question then would be, how did you get blood? Because it had to form inside, everything had to form inside your mom's body. So the blood you had to get been made inside your mother's body. So how is that possible? I don't know. I mean, I ain't no doctor or scientist. So I don't know. It just don't make sense to me. It don't make sense because if it was such a big deal, then I think God would have made people to where babies can come from cabbages or, Cabbage Patch Kids or outside of the mother's body. The baby would come from outside the mom's body because God would be horrified that something in there could get nicked. When the baby's coming out, blood, I've seen blood. I've seen blood when I was in school. They showed probably a little bit too much when they were trying to educate people on childbirth and stuff like that. Yeah, I saw blood. There was blood all over the place. There was blood on the baby. I'm not saying that the baby can't have a different blood type, but there was blood on the baby. Where did the blood come from? Was the baby bleeding? I think the mom was bleeding. Well, we're looking at Serenity, like, I don't know. But yeah, so I've seen blood get on babies. If this was such a freaking huge freaking deal, you know what I mean? Jehovah's Witnesses worried that blood from the mom might get in the baby's nose or get in the baby's mouth, and now they got to cast out the baby because it didn't consume blood. Like, this stuff is just stupid. This stuff is just beyond stupid. All right, somebody commented. Somebody's mom lost 2 babies refusing blood. That is terrible, especially if that could have been solved with just availing yourself of the medical technology that we've got. Troll in Paradise says the babies has a blood type of the mother and father's combination. That makes sense. Now Serenity is shaking her head. So that makes sense. Because it has to come from somewhere. And the only contact with other humans is the father and the mother. So yeah, it makes sense that it comes from the two of them, or a mixture of the two. But that's a good point. Trouble in Paradise, that is a very good point. Somebody says if it's type O, the mom was messing around. I don't know what that means. Empress 88 says, you share some light on Bethel. I was raised as a joke as witness. I don't know what you mean. Many members hemorrhage during the birthing process. Because I haven't been personally to a child birth. Normally I'm outside of the room or whatever, but I've seen it on TV. And I've seen there was blood. There was blood all over the place. So I was like, Yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses thinking that blood is so freaking sacred. Well, why is it all over the place then? Why didn't God make it to where people can have babies without blood being everywhere? All right, Fina says it would be heartbreaking to face a situation where a family member is in an accident with serious injury but cannot receive a life-saving blood transfusion. They just let them die. That's 100% true. Because being raised in the religion, I think it was after Bethel. After Bethel, I had lots of doubts about stuff. I had lots of doubts about stuff because I saw at Bethel the polar opposite of what I was taught was supposed to be there. So once they started just putting people out on the street, so to speak, and the person just had to fend for themselves, wherever they ended up was wherever they ended up. When they started putting Bethelites out on the street, well, after that, I had a relative that needed blood. And man, I think I was one of the most upset people. Not that other people weren't concerned and upset, but other people were a whole lot more comfortable with trusting this person's life into the governing body's hands. The same governing body that couldn't figure out a better way other than to just put Bethelites out on the street because they're inbreds. I think of some of that. I don't know how they make such horrible decisions all the time, but I wasn't comfortable with that. I wasn't comfortable, and had it been a parent, oh, I think I would have stood up and been like, "Yeah, no, we're not doing this. We're not doing this." I would have talked to the doctors, and I'd been like, "What's the chances? If it's a monumental, uh, big difference that they would be able to survive if they used blood in a surgery." Oh yeah. At that point, and I don't know that I was fully awake, but I was doubting the governing body. Come on, I trusted these people to be able to leave everything and come to Bethel. And they completely failed me as far as my trust was concerned. So after leaving Bethel, I'm going to then trust them with a relative's life. I think I was probably the main one that I know of that I'm not mentioning who this is, but I'm the main one that I knew of that I was not comfortable. I was trying to find some loophole somewhere. And sure enough, doing procedures without blood, uh, the procedure that they did, it didn't work. Let's put it that way. It didn't work the way we wanted it to. So, yeah. First, you have Bethel, and Bethel was a complete failure. And then after Bethel, I end up losing a relative that, who knows, they could have lived longer if they would have taken blood, if they essentially wouldn't have listened to these idiotic men in New York. Uh, well, they could have been alive. So when you get hit with those two major events, there's somebody literally not with you anymore, right after having to come to grips with Bethel, and they completely don't know what on earth that they're doing there, and having to figure out where to go and what to do from there. I think those things will start waking you up. Eventually, things like that will start waking you up. So it makes sense that eventually I started to wake up. I started to think. Everybody don't know what on earth they're doing, but people are all following them like they're God. So yeah, eventually I ended up waking up, and I think Bethel was definitely the start to that. Being able to literally live and work at the headquarters where I am there every day, and I see that these people do not conduct themselves like they say they do in the watchtower, and I physically see that the governing body do not know what they're doing, and I physically see that they don't care about people. They're packing people's stuff and putting it wherever, just telling them to leave. Oh yeah, eventually I'm gonna wake up when bad things continue to happen. TB says, Uncle was about to take blood until my sister came in the room and shamed him. He died 4 months later. Ooh, that is tough. Ooh, that is tough. Imagine if she were to wake up after that. Ooh, how do you live with that? How in the world do you live with this? I mean, it's not murder per se. I don't know. That is kind of murder. If somebody's about to take poison, or if there's some poison in a cup, and you convince the person to take it, you convince the person that dying is better than trying to be alive, doing what you can to be alive. That's darn near murder. That's in the spectrum. So that's tough. And that's what I mean by Jehovah's Witnesses were extremists. They're in a cult led by men who were the cult leaders, and they would watch people die if these men told them to. That is an extreme cult. That is what Jehovah's Witnesses are. That's what is, being brought to light here with all these changes. And they got a lot more changes to go because they were extremists. Somebody says, why would anyone trust their preacher over their doctor for medical advice? Only cult drones live in that kind of fear of critical thinking. That is a very good point. Fina says it is considered like a mortal sin in JW, like it cannot be forgiven and warrants expulsion from the community. Yeah, trying to save your life by taking medical procedures. They treat it as if that's the worst thing you can ever do. They've convinced themselves to sacrifice their entire lives and children for the hope of a perfect life later. The whole paradise thing. People all are, well, I'll get to be in a paradise later if I listen to these 8 men in New York. It is so stupid. I knew this family. They had 2 boys. One of their sons developed leukemia. Husband and wife were completely brainwashed with a blood and let their son die. That is terrible. So Empress 88 asks, why did they tell you to leave? I'm guessing that's Bethel. So basically, it wasn't just me. There was an announcement where a talk was given by a governing body member, and it was new light. And this new light was that Jehovah didn't want as many Bethelites as there were. Jehovah needed more help in the field. Jehovah needed people to join MTS and be sent out into different countries. And all the Bethelites are thinking, well, not all the Bethelites, because all the Bethelites weren't, they didn't all believe in the garbage. Some of them were there for the prominence. But some of the ones that believed in the garbage were thinking, oh man, Armageddon has got to be around the corner. Jehovah don't want a whole lot of people condensed in one spot. It's kind of what I was thinking, because I'm thinking if Armageddon hits in the Great Tribulation and you got all these people in one spot, oh, we're all going to get attacked by the government. So maybe Jehovah's like trying to spread us out all over so that we can continue the organization underground. So basically, it wasn't just me that was getting asked to leave. There was a whole bunch of people that they told to leave so that they could cut the size down. And I think that was around the time where they sold a building in Brooklyn. They were selling buildings, whole freaking buildings that would house Bethelites. They were selling them. So as they're selling them, they got to figure out what to do with all these Bethelites because they no longer have the buildings to house them because they're selling them. So they just started cutting staff everywhere. They're cutting staff. Well, the problem is that this staff agreed or trusted that the governing body was being led by God. So therefore they were trustworthy. So therefore they would leave their jobs, everything, sell what they had, and go work for free at Bethel. And now all these people are getting sent away. Some of these people came from other countries. So some of these people had to think of what the heck to do because their whole family was in another country. So when the governing body and everybody's telling them, well, y'all got to go because we're making billions of dollars off selling buildings in Brooklyn, some of these people had to figure out, well, how the heck am I about to get to this other country to get to my family? I had like a 3 or 4 hour drive to get to where my father was. Some people, their family is in another country. So Watchtower putting Bethelites out on the street caused extreme hardship with tons of people, but you'll never read that in the Watchtower. They won't tell you that part. All right. That was a good comment there. All right, let me get caught up. Yeah, no, there was no severance pay. There was nothing but, and some of these people didn't have cars. You know what I mean? So it was nothing but just people getting put out and the governing body lying and saying that these people were being sent to MTS. The governing body essentially was lying and saying that these people were being moved to another part of the organization. It's almost like if a job is cutting positions and they're saying, well, you'll just get moved around in the company. That's essentially what the governing body was saying. Don't worry, Bethelites, you all be moved around in different parts of the organization, MTS, Gilead, and such. That wasn't true. They weren't sending these people all these places. They were just telling them to leave. Maybe some of the people that have been there for 20 years, maybe some of them got the pick to go to Gilead or something like that. But no, the general person was just getting told to leave. The Borg did trouble in paradise. The Borg didn't want to spend any money on taking care of their people, even if they are volunteering 144,000% of their time to the Borg. That is true. Watchtower could have easily said, okay, we're going to sell these buildings. Well, we'll house the Bethelites here. We'll build something, or we will buy something, or whatever the case may be, but we'll house the Bethelites here, and then we'll take those Bethelites and move them over to Warwick when we get that built. They could have easily done that, but that would cost money. They ain't spending no money on nobody. Watchtower don't spend no money on nobody. That cult don't spend no money on nobody. No money goes out to help people. Unless it's a publicity stunt. They only want money coming in. Are there any organizations or churches that share similar core beliefs as the JW but are less like a cult? Have you considered joining these if they exist? I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses are pretty out there in their teachings and their beliefs. You know what I mean? Bible, let's just put it like this. The Bible students are still around, the group that Jehovah's Witnesses originally were and split from. The people who was it? It was Charles Taze Russell, and then the guy that came after Charles Taze Russell essentially broke the group off into another group and stopped following Charles Taze Russell's teachings, the studies in the scriptures and what have you. That group, the Bible students, they ain't even like Jehovah's Witnesses. The Jehovah's Witnesses became an extremist cult. So essentially, to answer your question, yeah, there are a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses. If they were to join Al Qaeda or something like that, they'd probably feel extremely comfortable. You're in a group that has extremist ideologies that are willing to let people die if they don't believe the same way that they do. Oh, a Jehovah's Witness will feel right at home. Because that's what the frick they left, was an extremist group. The extremist group was essentially just working behind the scenes, behind the backs of governments, doing things that they can get away with so that they can make money. But yeah, if you were to join ISIS or something to that effect, a Jehovah's Witness would probably feel at home amongst people like that. I don't think that you should join ISIS. You know what I mean? I don't think you should join another extremist group. But no. So basically, you would waste your life joining groups where other men are telling you what the freak to do. Why do that? You know what I mean? There's no reason that you can't think and make your own decisions as to what it is you think about the Bible or what it is you believe. Bernie agrees. Bernie said, that's right. You can think for yourself. I would not join another group like Jehovah's Witnesses that don't let you think. You got a brain. There's no reason you can't use it. Somebody's sister left a 6-figure job for Bethel. Yeah, because they're freaking nurses and plumbers and everything else. People who are electricians lost out on all this money to join Bethel, and here Bethel is just kicking people out left and right, could care less about their sacrifice and their story or where they came from or anything like that. Yeah, trouble. That was Judge Rutherford. Rutherford came and took over, legal battle and took over. And then after the legal battle, it's like, okay, we got to make a separation between my group and these Bible students. So it was a split. Bible students are still around. You can contact them. They got a website. I think it's International Bible Students, I believe. They got a website. I've met with them and talked with them. They still believe Charles Taze Russell's teachings. Rutherford broke away from that. So he wanted teachings separate from Charles Taze Russell's teachings, and that's what they did. It makes no sense, no logical sense at all for you to break away from the teachings of the freaking founder, because if the freaking founder was wrong, then there's no reason for the whole freaking cult. But he did it, and people freaking still stayed. That's what I mean. It's like the Watchtower or Jehovah's Witnesses tapped into the dumbest groups of people in the world, and that's how they've been able to survive for as long as they have. Let me see. All right, I think I finally got caught up. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be, Kelly said, I wouldn't want to be in a group that is anything like those fake weirdos. I wouldn't either. You would waste your time. There's nothing a cult can offer you that you can't get on yourself if you learn to develop social skills and the such. You could go to school and earn a title. You can go to school, earn a title, and nobody can take it away from you. Whether it be being an RN, registered nurse, or whatever the case may be. You can go to school, earn a title, not join a cult and wait for them to make you a ministerial servant. And it's not even true. Like, it's not even scripturally true. They're just telling you that. All right, let's move on here. So we watched the update when they changed the disfellowshipping rule, letting you say hi briefly to people now. They showed a video of a grown woman being isolated in the back of the hall, like in a adult timeout or something to that effect. These are broadcasts. These are videos. Like you can't go back and say that they don't shun. I don't know if you guys remember, but I did a video where I called Bethel and asked them if they shun. They said they don't. They didn't. They can never lie about that anymore. Watchtower shoots themselves in the foot. They showed on video the process of a woman being shunned. When they changed the rules, they showed a woman being shunned in like an example, like an illustration, like a skit. And they changed the rules, so now people know. No, people weren't lying when they were saying Jehovah's Witnesses shunned. Because before they changed the rule, they said, now you can say hi real quick. Before, people couldn't say hi real quick. That person was just ostracized, and they were ostracized from everybody and sitting in the back of the hall like they are, just filth. They were treated like filth. So that's the problem. Watchtower trying to make these changes to appeal to the governments, but to change, they're admitting what they changed from. The cult members, the Jehovah's Witnesses, they love to lie. They love to spread lies about people. They love doing that stuff. They can't lie now because it's on freaking video with them shunning in order to change the freaking shunning rule. Yeah, going to meetings, disfellowship was humiliating. It is exactly that. It is meant to be humiliating. It is meant to torture anyone who doesn't follow what the governing body tells them. Because you can remember when Toni Morris wanted to get, him some bubbly, there was no limit to the amount of bottles he can go get, and no one knows how much of it he was drinking and all that. But he wasn't about to get disfellowship. They ain't got to follow nothing. When I was at Bethel, that's one thing. You hardly ever saw governing body members out in service. They ain't got to follow their own rules. They just disfellowship and humiliate other people to try to keep people in line. They can't lie about it anymore. For them to change it, they had to admit to it. Just like how they lie about protecting the thousands of confessed pedophiles that hold positions today of elders, ministerial servants. Yeah, I think that's, unfortunately, that is a huge factor that keeps people in the religion. Where are the pedophiles going to go? Where are all these people? Now, how big of a problem is the pedophilia and whatnot? Let's just put it like this. I went to several congregations and I saw issues of it everywhere I went. There was no congregation I can remember where there wasn't somebody that was an adult that gravitated more towards the kids and was trying to be around these kids. And there was one guy I remember taking gum out of a kid's mouth and putting it in his mouth and chewing it, like that kind of playful type stuff that you typically wouldn't do with, yeah. So where are all these pedophiles going to go? No, they're going to stay in the Jehovah's Witnesses regardless of what the heck Jehovah's Witnesses change. Empress 88 says, what? Yeah, I was out in field service. Basically, I've seen a lot of questionable things at a lot of different halls. But I was out in field service, and Jehovah's Witnesses have this belief that they're better than everybody else. If you're a Jehovah's Witness, you're automatically morally righteous, essentially. So they don't believe that a Jehovah's Witness can be a pedophile. Therefore, they don't protect the kids at all. So I remember being out in field service, and there was a bunch of teenage girls that just got dropped off. And yeah, they get in the car with adult men because these are the adult men that were out in service. And I'm getting ready to go home. And as I'm getting in my car to get ready to leave, I just got out of their car that just left one guy in there with all these teenage girls. And he's, joking around with them, laughing. I don't hear everything that's being said, but I hear him say, "Give me that." And darn near reaches in the girl's mouth, took her gum out and put it in his mouth and started chewing it as they drove off, and he's laughing. Yeah, I've seen a lot of questionable stuff. You can't do that at no other church that I know of, that I'm aware of. Only Jehovah's Witnesses believe this weird belief that none of their members can humanly possibly be pedophiles, so they're not going to check up on them. They're going to drop their kids off at different places and just leave them the heck there. Yeah, like there's no place else where parents are going to drop off a bunch of teenage kids and just be cool with whoever is there, can take these girls, put them in their car, and drive off with them. Like whoever, as long as they're a Jehovah's Witness, just whoever. That wouldn't fly anywhere else. So all the bad people, where are they going to go and continue to be able to do the bad things that they were doing? Nowhere that I know of. So a lot of people aren't going to leave the Jehovah's Witnesses. So, you know, uh, I had to delete a comment there. That's not funny. But yeah, so when they talk about protecting them, when they talk about protecting certain people or elders who go on power trips, they're not going to be able to go anywhere else and tell people what to do. Elders aren't going to be able to go anywhere else, and people look up to them so much they're able to just meet with their wives alone. You know how many times I walked in the house and my stepdad he's an elder at the time, is there in the house by himself with some other man's wife. And then I walk in and all of a sudden they look kind of, you know, uncomfortable. They're not able to do that anywhere else. So therefore, it doesn't matter how obvious the Jehovah's Witnesses cult is, that it is a cult. It doesn't matter how obvious that it's a cult, that they keep changing teachers, they can't get it right. They ain't leaving because they're not allowed to do the stuff that they do anywhere else and get away with it. So yeah, I mean, so yeah, no, that's that. So the next point I wanted to touch on, we don't want to keep everybody here too long, was old watchtowers. If you remember, uh, if you remember, old watchtowers used to be the smoking gun. All of the Jehovah's Witnesses' old false teachings were on old watchtowers because they printed freaking everything. Well, Jehovah's Witnesses turned their own watchtowers, older material, into something that their members weren't really supposed to look at. Really, literally. You ain't allowed, you're a bad person if you go and you study old watchtowers. Because if you go around a Jehovah's Witness and you start talking about, well, there's an older article that I looked up and it was back in 1980. The Jehovah's Witness is going to get so uncomfortable and get ready to get defensive because he knows most likely it's a false teaching in an old article that's being brought up. Well, Jehovah's Witnesses were also worried about these old watchtowers because it highlighted that they're a false religion, and now it's the broadcast. It's these freaking broadcasts where they're coming out and admitting darn near every teaching they had needed to be changed. Every freaking rule they had needed to be changed. They're wrong about everything humanly possible. And old old watchtowers do prove their teachings to be false, but so do the broadcasts now. You can't get rid of that. You can't pretend that some quote unquote apostate made that up. What are they going to do now? Jehovah's Witnesses are in worse position now because they've got broadcasts. You see the person in video. All you got to do is record it. There's tons of people that record these broadcasts and put them in their YouTube videos. They're out there now. They can't pretend they didn't say certain things anymore. This is going to be a problem for Watchtower. They cannot come out with a broadcast and then years later say they never said it. So the governing body of Jehovah, the current leaders of the cult, I think do more damage to their own religion than Ray Franz did. Like Ray Franz would be rolling in his grave, laughing, cracking up, and smiling as he's looking at these governing body members after all this time and all that they did to him and how bad they treated him. Now they got to get up on a broadcast in front of everybody and change it all. Anyway, they ended up having to change it all anyway. They should have just listened to Ray France and changed that stuff then. But no, now that they done got ousted out of whole countries and all kinds of funding is getting removed and everything's falling apart, now they get on a broadcast and change it all. That broadcast can't be taken back down and pretended like it never happened or nothing like that. It's out there now. These things were extreme. They need to be changed. The governing body, quote unquote, has decided after looking at the Bible in its context, women can wear pants now. What freaking scripture did they look up to say women can wear pants? They didn't look up no daggum scripture that said women can wear pants. The only thing that happened is they wanted to outwardly look like they were easygoing on people and that they just let people do what they want to do. They want to look to the outside that they let people do what it is that they want to do. There ain't no daggum scripture that they looked up that said men can wear beards and women can wear pants and all that stuff. They're just trying to pretend. Somebody says, Crisis of Conscience, a good read for all JWs. That bad boy was a great read. Crisis of Conscience is probably one of the, woo-wee. That was the best book I had ever read. Like that Crisis of Conscience was great. But it's just, it's like karma coming back to bite them. They should have listened to Ray France back then. He was right back then about how they were treating people. Now that they done jacked up the freaking religion, jacked up their money, getting ousted from whole countries, now they go ahead and change it. If they would have had sense, they would have listened to Ray France 10 years ago, or however long, 15 years, however long ago it was, people were trying to talk sense into them. They'd have listened to Ray France back then and made those changes a long time ago, and they wouldn't be in the situation that they're in. That's why I don't feel sorry for them. Aha, they're getting locked up in Russia and wherever the heck else they're getting locked up at. You know what I mean? In Africa, if they start throwing spears at them or whatever the heck they do, then they should have listened to Ray France a long time ago. Instead, they treated him like crap and turned on him. The dude was probably saving the freaking religion. But no, they turned on him, and this is what they get. There's a such thing as you reap what you sow. So this is what they've been doing to people for so long, and now they get to be the butt of the joke for all of us. We all get to laugh at them now. Let's see here. I don't think they said, scripture says you can wear slacks now. They didn't even say Jehovah said. They did say that the governing body had decided. Right. They said the governing body has decided, but correct me if I'm wrong. They opened that conversation by saying the governing body has studied scripture in context, as if to say that they're getting it from the Bible. But yeah, no, it's coming from the governing body. That's part of what's damning about that broadcast. If you tell Jehovah's Witnesses, this stuff isn't coming from Jehovah. It's coming from these 8 men in Brooklyn. And if they try to argue with you, show them their own broadcast. All right, let's move on to the next point. And that is the part where Jehovah's Witnesses have got a lot of work to do. They still got a long way to go because Jehovah's Witnesses are still extreme. They changed the freaking ties and the beard and stuff like that. But Jehovah's Witnesses are still extreme when it comes to calling people apostates and persecuting people who leave their religion. Jehovah's Witnesses persecute people who leave and then get upset when these people speak out about being persecuted by their family. This is ridiculous. So Watchtower has caused people to treat their families in a very undignified, unhumane way. And then if the person then speaks up about how badly they're being treated, Jehovah's Witnesses want to label them apostate. Well, we all saw Splain crying and whining on a broadcast about how the governments aren't giving them money, and then when Russia said, well, no, you guys can't operate here, they were crying and whining about that. Jehovah's Witnesses are the main ones crying and whining about everything that happens when it happens to them, but they think that they can treat people poorly. And I'm talking treating their own family in as inhumane a manner as humanly possible. I've had people tell lies about me. I've had people do all kinds of stuff. Now, I got them back for doing it, but I've had people do all kinds of stuff. And if you speak out about it, like they're supposed to be able to just torture, Jehovah's Witnesses are supposed to be allowed to torture their families and do whatever they want to people. And if those people speak up, oh, now you're apostate. That is ridiculous. They are still extremists. They ain't even touched. They haven't even began to fix the whole issue with labeling people apostate and treating people horribly. As a matter of fact, on that video where they changed everything on that broadcast, it's like they doubled down. Like, okay, well, we let you wear beards and we're letting you not have to wear ties, but we can't budge on the apostate thing. We got to label people apostates. We get to cry, whine, and bitch and complain. But if any of you bitch and complain about all the false teachings that we keep having to change, we'll call you an apostate, and we can't deal with that. Like it's ridiculous. So they're still extremists. They still should be banned in Russia. They should be banned everywhere else. If they were banned here, oh man, I would have a great time. I've actually thought about Russia's cold. I think in the winter. It could be cold in times that's not the winter. If it wasn't for that, I've thought about going to Russia just because they banned Jehovah's Witnesses. And if I saw anybody standing next to a cart, I would call the police and they would actually be illegal. Oh, it would just be great. It would be great. I would need a Russian translator with me because, oh man, I would 100% go to Russia and drive all over. Russia's huge, but I would drive everywhere and let me find out. Oh yeah, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. Let me find out somebody's having a Jehovah's Witness meeting. I'm gonna call the Russian authorities and they're gonna get handcuffed and they're gonna get taken out. I would join the Russian police force as long as because I want to focus on just finding Jehovah's Witnesses. As long as I can just find Jehovah's Witnesses, and I had free reign to use my taser, I would join the Russian police and start learning Russian and just search for Jehovah's Witnesses, and that would just freaking be my career. Could you imagine working for Jehovah's Witnesses at Bethel and they refused to pay me, but Russians would pay me to find them and shut down their meetings? Oh man, that's my dream job. That's my dream job. So if there's some Russian police agency and they're willing to hire somebody that doesn't speak Russian, but is more than willing to find Jehovah's Witnesses, and I know what watchtowers look like. So if I look in the window and I see a watchtower, I know what it is. Oh man, I will call the whole Russian police force. They'll get helicopters, hook the person's house up to the helicopters, fly the whole freaking house to the prison with them in it. Ooh, that would be my dream job. You know what I mean? I don't think Serenity would want to go to Russia because it's cold, and we don't like the cold. But other than that, oh man, yeah, you know what I mean. Somebody one of you guys find a Russian police agency or some agency where Jehovah's Witnesses are not allowed to, they're not legal, and tell them that I want to join it, because I will find you some Jehovah's Witness. You know what I mean? Even if they got beards now, I'll still figure it out. I'll still find them sons of bitches, and we're going to bring them to jail. Straight to jail. Next point. So the next point is the whole concept of, once you leave the Jehovah's Witnesses, this is the last point. I don't want to hold you guys too much longer. Last point is, once you leave the Jehovah's Witnesses and you're leaving a group where you're not allowed to think, it can be overwhelming, because now you have to know what to think. Before you weren't allowed to think, but now you have to learn what to think about God, about religion, about should you join this church or that church, should you believe this or that. And when I first began to leave, I was extremely confused about this. And my first reaction was what I was used to as being a Jehovah's Witness, and that's to ask other people. That is to have someone else tell me what I should believe by asking, well, what do you think? And essentially, I'm going to make up my mind based off what you tell me. Well, you have to understand that it is okay for you to take time and do research, because being in that cult, it teaches you the end of the world is so close, and that this battle of Armageddon is so close, where God is going to kill everybody that hadn't decided the religion to be in. Somebody said Seventh-day Adventists. I don't know, this is not to change the subject, but I don't know how similar Seventh-day Adventists are to Jehovah's Witnesses. But that'd be something to research. But that's the point, is you can do your research now. You can read the Bible. Don't be afraid that, I've got to figure out what church to join, or if I should join a church, and I got to figure this out right now. Keep in mind, you weren't allowed to think as Jehovah's Witness, so now you got to research everything. So if you want to research the Bible, get you a Bible. They got them everywhere. You can even get them online and start reading. And at least that way you read the book yourself. And I don't mean with a watchtower telling you what it's wanting you to believe about the Bible. Take your time, do some research. There's no real reason to leave a cult and then just ask somebody else what you should believe and let them tell you what you should believe. Take your time, do your research. sometimes, you have to go out and get involved with things. You know, do you want to join a church? I don't know. Go to one and see. Go to one and see. Go to one and see what you think about it. Uh, do you? There's the atheist concept. Do your ideas align with that? Well, first you got to look up what an atheist is. What an atheist is. Look up what an agnostic is. Maybe read some books on atheism. Read some books on agnosticism. We spent all that time reading watchtowers. Well, now we are allowed to read some actual beneficial material. Why not do it? You know what I mean? If we were so diligent in reading all that garbage in the watchtower and all it's going to do is change every other year, why not read some actual beneficial material? Somebody says, I counted time for almost 40 plus years. They got to pay me for lost wages. I agree. And they not paying. And since they not paying, I would accept payment at an agency in Russia or wherever else, and we'll round up them Jehovah's Witnesses and put them all in jail because they owe us all money for lost wages. But that's what I wanted to say, is the whole concept of belief and the number of different views on different opinions are vast. Somebody says, I'm late for the stream. Yep. But it'll eventually be on YouTube. We've been here for a little while. It'll be on YouTube. But learning what you believe now takes time. Don't be afraid because you think the end of the world is coming around the corner or God is going to kill everybody in Armageddon in the next few days or something to that effect. Take your time, do your research. That way you don't waste a lot of time, because Southern Boss Lady said that 40 plus years she spent as a Jehovah's Witness. Well, you don't want to spend 40 plus years as a Jehovah's Witness, then join the Mormons, then join this and join that, and you done wasted another 30 years joining all this stuff. Take your time, do your research. Don't just believe what the heck people tell you. Study it yourself. That's part of the problem with so many people being misled, is they're so willing to listen to whatever the heck they're told and so slow to pick up some books, do some research, use your brain, take your time. So, so that's all I had. I'm getting ready to get off here. So if anybody has got anything else they want to say before we conclude, you guys go ahead. But yeah, governing body has essentially admitted Russia was right. Russia was right. As many people were complaining that, oh, they removed the legal status of Jehovah's Witnesses. You can't make extremist groups legal. It don't even make logical sense. If they're extremists, they should be illegal. They're admitting to be extremists, otherwise they wouldn't be changing everything, because everything was extreme. So you guys comment down below. It'll be posted on YouTube probably shortly. X Wall Kill Bethelite signing out.